The world is a vampire. Hey, everybody, Rex Bear League Project. How the heck are you? So much news, and I want to share with you rapid fire style. So let's just jump right in. Buckle up, Buttercups. Let's go. Did you hear President Donald Trump said on Iran, we're looking at some very strong options. I'm getting an hourly report, and we're going to make a determination very soon. We could be going into Iran again. I mean, if we look at last time when U.S. Special Forces and the Air Force, the military, took out 3 nuclear sites in Iran, and it was like a walk in the park. I mean, things are getting pretty intense, but are they? So Trump is weighing options against Iran, CNBC. And then Reuters, deaths from Iran protests reach more than 500. Rights group says, and Iran warns it will retaliate if U.S. attacks, as hundreds killed in protests. So the last time the U.S. had military operations in Iran that we know about was Operation Midnight Hammer, where the United States striked on 3 different nuclear sites, and it was literally like a walk in the park, at least in the media. And then, so why not Greenland next? I mean, Venezuela, piece of cake. Greenland up next. Iran, probably. Cuba, looks like it. Colombia, maybe. Well, check this out. France, 24. Denmark warns of decisive moment as Trump renews threat of force over Greenland. Denmark's prime minister said on Sunday her country faced a decisive moment in its diplomatic dispute with the United States over Greenland after Donald Trump again suggested using force to seize the Arctic territory. Speaking ahead of meetings in Washington on raw materials, Frederickson said there is a conflict over Greenland. And there's also speculation that if we annex Greenland, NATO might fall. But in other news, The Guardian, Trump tells Cuba to make a deal or face the consequences. And you probably didn't hear about this, but this is big news. Reuters, China, Russia, Iran start BRICS-plus naval exercises in South African waters. They're getting prepared as well. And meanwhile, China just applied to put 200,000 satellites in space after calling Starlink a crash risk. So they need 200,000 more satellites up there, just to make sure. And that's South China news. We'll get into that in a moment. But did you hear about a group of now, I haven't confirmed this yet. This is just an X post from Right Angle News Network. Maybe you can confirm this for me or help me confirm this. This is still, we're waiting verification. But according to this, a group of activists using GPS to track and surround ICE agents in southern Minnesota just had their windows smashed and were pulled out of their cars by agents. Fox News left-wing group backs tens of thousands of anti-ICE agitators nationwide. We'll talk about that in a few. And did you hear about the mysterious weapons that U.S. Special Forces used in Venezuela to capture Maduro? Well, we're going to read that in a minute. And if you haven't read it yet, I mean, it sounds like something the U.S. military would write to freak everybody out. But allegedly, it's from a soldier that was there, was the security for Maduro. But as soon as he saw this, he was like, look, I'm out. You win. I don't know what I was thinking. So, yeah, we'll talk about that. And what else do we have for you? Justice Department opens investigation into Jerome Powell as Trump ramps up campaign against the Federal Reserve. So Fed chair accuses DOJ of threatening criminal charges over building renovation projects because central bank defied Trump's interest rate demands. And that's according to The Guardian. Did you see the U-Haul that drove through a crowd in LA during an anti-Iranian regime rally in Westwood? That's interesting. Yeah. And there was a sign on the side of the U-Haul showing some type of slogan in a language that I don't understand. I'll show it to you in a minute. We're going to get into that. And in other news, underground church says leaders detained as China steps up crackdown. Early rain pastor said to be among those held in sweep that follows arrests of members of other unregistered churches. What else do we got? Well, that was The Guardian. And in New York Post news, you know, those autonomous cars that are picking people up, the autonomous taxis. And then, you know, Elon Musk has this vision of robo-taxis taking everybody everywhere all the time and then getting paid in Dogecoin. Well, anyway, I don't know about the last part, but Waymo rider flees when self-driving car gets stuck on tracks near oncoming train. Dramatic video shows a Waymo passenger jumping out of a self-driving car at the last minute as it stopped on rail tracks in the path of an oncoming train. Automated cars. Great idea. Great idea. And do you remember, did you ever see the photo of the man that was convicted for carrying Pelosi's podium during the Capitol riot? He's now seeking politics in Florida. Adam Johnson, previously sentenced to 75 days in prison after being photographed carrying Pelosi's lectern during the January 6th, 2021 event. Check this out. This guy looks so happy. I got to show you this. He's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, shit. I'm going to get arrested. Here, this is the guy. And yeah, he's running for politics now in Florida. So we'll keep you posted on that. Very interesting. And if you haven't yet, what the heck are you waiting for? If you do me a favor, if you do Leak Project a favor, do yourselves a favor, check us out over on Patreon, where we have exclusive content, unedited, uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free, and long format interviews with amazing guests from around the world, different topics, different subjects. And a few days ago, we did the 2026 predictions and forecasts. And you can actually, and this for 2026 and beyond, I made 66 different predictions and forecasts for 2026. Some of those have already happened. Literally, some of them have already happened. We made predictions at the end of 2023 for 2024 and 2025 and beyond. About half of those have hit. And you can see the timestamp on that. So check us out on Patreon. And let's get into the news. Let's just jump right back to the first article that I mentioned. U.S. President Donald Trump on Iran. We're looking at some very strong options. I'm getting an hourly report, and we're going to make a determination very soon. So interesting enough, I think that timing couldn't be better. If there's going to be military intervention in Iran. And I'll tell you why. Because the protests right now in Iran, I mean, it's definitely taken the nation by storm. Major protests. People, unfortunately, are dying in these protests, and they're still taking to the streets. That's how much passion these guys have. That's how much passion these people have in Iran for regime change. They're like putting their lives at risk while this is going on. Now, combine that with what seems to be pretty good relations with the U.S. and Israel. I mean, as we just mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the military intervention that took out 3 nuclear locations in Iran. President Trump doesn't seem to be slowing down in his maneuvering, or in the administration's, I should say, the administration's maneuvering for positioning of the global stage, like possibly annexing Greenland, taking Maduro and possibly a lot of oil and other resources from Venezuela and merging it into this, USA umbrella. The talks of Colombia and Cuba. Denmark's a bit concerned. There was an intel report released earlier saying that the U.S. could be a security threat because Denmark has held on to the deed of Greenland for so long, and now the U.S. is like, wait a second, we're going to take Greenland. We're going to take it one way or the other. I don't think there's going to be any military intervention whatsoever in Greenland. I don't see that happening for 1 second. Financially, politically, military. They might send the military there, but there's already a military base there, a U.S. military base. There was a U.S. military base there 80 years ago, approximately. So, but NATO being fractured is a very real possibility. I could definitely see, but here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the $1 million question. What happens at midterm, during midterms? What happens after midterms? And what happens in the next election? Things have gone so far to the right that we could see the pendulum shift far to the left and offsetting this transition. I mean, things have changed so much the past couple of years. You remember back when President Obama would, every once in a while, there'd be these new executive orders passed and people would freak out. Now executive orders are like the norm. I have not seen this much change politically in the U.S. ever, especially in this amount of time. It seems like it was a slow boil for a while, and now it's just ramped up. I mean, we've got a new sheriff in town, and it's definitely taken a shift into a different direction. So some people find it exciting. Some people find it fascinating. Some people find it frightening. So if you're any of those people, I understand. I get it. So Trump is weighing options against Iran, and right now would be the time. I would also say this. Now, I haven't confirmed this, and I've been attempting to confirm this, and I haven't been able to, but there have been reports that have been out for a while now about Russia telling all of their citizens to leave the embassies in Iran and Israel. And I haven't been able to confirm that. So that is not verified, but there has been internet chatter that Russia has demanded all of their people leave Iran and Israel embassies. So that could be very telling. It could be nothing. But Donald Trump said the United States is considering very strong options regarding Iran, stressing that he is receiving hour-by-hour intelligence updates from national security and intelligence officials. His remarks came as Iran faces nationwide protests, triggering economic collapse, inflation, currency devaluation, and long-standing political repression. While Trump did not explicitly announce military action, the language mirrors phrasing used in past crises that preceded sanctions, escalation, cyber operations, or targeted strikes. Administration officials speaking anonymously indicated that military, economic, and covert options remain under active review. Yeah, you don't say. And the comments were widely interpreted as a strategic warning aimed at Iran's leadership, while simultaneously reassuring U.S. allies, particularly Israel, that Washington is prepared to act if red lines are crossed. Yeah, red lines. Well, they can make any red line they want. Anyway, so yes. And Iran has said, we will strike back but they've said that before. Let's take a look at this. Senior Iranian officials warned that any U.S. military intervention would be met with direct retaliation, explicitly naming U.S. military bases in the Middle East and Israel as potential targets. The statement came amid Iran's most severe internal unrest in years, with security forces conducting mass arrests, shutting down internet access, and using lethal force against protesters. Iranian leadership framed the protests as a foreign-backed destabilization effort, accusing the U.S. and Israel of information warfare and covert interference. Reuters noted that Iran's warnings were intended not only for Washington, but also for regional allies hosting U.S. forces, increasing pressure on Gulf states. Iran's messaging reflects a strategy of externalizing internal instability, portraying domestic dissent as an extension of geopolitical conflict. And I'm going to take a drink of my mushroom kombucha. Oh, I love kombucha. This stuff's amazing. I have a drinking problem. I go through like 1 or 2 kombuchas a day. Okay. Yeah, this is BBC. Iran warns it will retaliate if the U.S. attacks, as hundreds are killed in protests. The United States did strike on Iranian nuclear sites in June, Operation Midnight Hammer. And these are the locations. Seem to be an absolute success. And I mean, did you read the reports of the Venezuelan security guy, the claims that he made allegedly about the US military and how badass they are. I mean, it's like something out of Tron. It's like Tron meets Cobra, G.I. Joe, Cobra. But we'll get into that in a minute. France 24. Denmark warns of decisive moment as Trump renews threat of force over Greenland. Denmark's prime minister said on Sunday her country faced a decisive moment in its diplomatic dispute with the United States over Greenland after Donald Trump again suggested using force to seize the Arctic territory. How would he do that? I'm just questioning, like, how would that actually happen? Speaking ahead of meetings in Washington on raw materials, Frederickson said there is a conflict over Greenland. Let me see if I can give you a little more information about this. Greenland's leadership publicly rejected takeover discussions, stressing cooperation over coercion. The dispute reflects deeper competition over Arctic shipping routes, missile defense positioning, rare earth minerals, and great power access. Greenland is not symbolic. It is a strategic terrain in a multi-polar world, and tensions there reflect a broader struggle over Arctic dominance. Yeah, I mean, now especially with climate change, and once again, climate is always changing, but we are seeing a lot of glaciers recede and a lot of locations that have been under ice starting to recede now. So this would be a great time to get access to some of those resources and some of those minerals if you're a mining company or if you're a miner. And also with the change on the world stage, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. continues to go down the path that has been going on for the past year. If it gets another 3 years of this to 8 years of this, I could potentially see an American Union, which would be essentially Greenland, Canada, the U.S., and Latin America. You would have this one giant superpower. And I think that's kind of the focus. You're going to have new regions, new global regions. Taiwan is a key component, a key nation, a key civilization in the Pacific, and China could attempt to usurp Taiwan this year or next year. Now, there's a lot of unverified reports on that, but recently there were exercises where the CCP, the People's Liberation Army, was they were surrounding the island with their vessels and running exercises very close to Taiwan waters. So we could see this year, especially with the recent discussion of Japan putting some skin in the game, saying that they would protect interests in Taiwan. China just may go full out this year and say, okay, let's see what you're going to do. We're going to take it. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think if they do attempt to take Taiwan, I think they're going to fail miserably. I think Taiwan has technology in a lot of these microchips that China and other nations are using. I think they have backdoor access to these chips somehow, and they could shut them on and off if they need to. And I think that they're also gathering a lot of intel in ways that China and other nations have done for years, where they found ways to put these fishy chips in certain data centers and technologies and computer systems where they can send that data back to the sender. So, there was a big scandal on fishy chips all the way back around 2010, when hundreds of thousands of these chips that were put into very sensitive data centers and servers could actually send information back to China. So very interesting. But Greenland is a key location to deter. I mean, if we break out of NATO, but yet we're in Greenland, or Greenland is now annexed under the US, that would be very interesting. Like, how would NATO respond? How would NATO respond against the US? Could we, if we break out of NATO and we align with Russia at a military or political standpoint, I'm just asking questions here. How would NATO respond to that? Could we potentially see conflict with NATO? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine a war with NATO, that would be wild. That would be absolutely wild. Trump also tells Cuba to make a deal or face the consequences. No more Venezuelan oil or money will flow to the communist-run island after Maduro's fall, says U.S. president. Let's take a look at this real quick. Trump warned Cuba to make a deal or face the consequences, escalating pressure on Havana following upheaval in Venezuela. I wonder what Russia's going to think about that. He accused Cuba of benefiting from Venezuelan oil and securing cooperation, particularly intelligence and internal policing support. I have a question. What have you ever wondered if like maybe some back deals were made with like, look, we'll back off on Ukraine. You let us take Latin America and we'll let you usurp up Ukraine and we'll pull out of NATO. We pull out of NATO, then you don't have to worry as much. Then you can have, we pull out of NATO, you take Ukraine, and we take Latin America. I still think Taiwan, but now with Japan securing Taiwan, what if we completely pull out of that? Well, we sold $11 billion of arms, or we're selling $11 billion of technology and weapons to Taiwan. So it's a good financial partner. Plus a lot of the computers and such. I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm thinking, what are the powers that be thinking right now that are jockeying for position? What kind of deals are they making behind the scenes? Because it seems like they're using these nations and these countries as bargaining chips almost. But President Trump accused Cuba of benefiting from Venezuelan oil and security cooperation, particularly intelligence and internal policing or policy and support. The Guardian reports the warning signals a broader U.S. effort to reshape the balance of power in the Caribbean and Latin America. Cuban leaders rejected the ultimatum, calling it imperialist coercion and reaffirming sovereignty. Analysts note the threat ties Cuba's future directly to energy flows, sanctions enforcement, and post-Maduro Venezuela. So Cuba is being positioned as the next domino in a regional pressure campaign centered on energy and security leverage. Cuba, they have some really cool cars in Cuba, some really cool old cars. They've done a great job out there, rebuilding a lot of the cars from like the 40s and the 50s and 60s. It's pretty cool. It's a different world out there. I know a guy, I used to work with a guy actually that loved visiting Cuba when I was in the travel industry. And he was actually, I'm sure he still is, he was a 32nd degree Freemason. And he showed me his card. I'm like, are you really a 32nd degree Freemason? He's like, yeah, check this out. Membership has its privileges. I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway, so I'm not a Freemason, but I know a lot of Freemasons, and most of them I know are pretty cool. At least they're cool to me. So anyway, that's a whole other podcast. I don't want to freak people out. Illuminati, man. Because my mind is not for rent to any god or government. But let's get back to the news. China, Russia, Iran begin naval exercises. Reuters. China, Russia, and Iran launched joint naval drills off South Africa under a BRICS-plus framework. The exercises include anti-piracy, search and rescue, maritime security operations. That's according to the official statements. Reuters notes analysts view the drills as a strategic signal to the U.S. and NATO amid Iran tensions. The location far from the participants' home waters demonstrates long-range coordination and interoperability. The drills underscore a trend towards multipolar military alignments among U.S. adversaries. And this isn't just about training, it's about presence, messaging, and alliance building outside Western security frameworks. I want to know more about this. South Africa, Simonstown Naval Base near Cape Town. Interesting. Isn't that where Elon Musk is from? Very, very interesting. So the lead nation, the People's Republic of China, is leading this year's exercise. China deployed the Tangshan which is a 161-meter destroyer. Russia deployed the Stoiky, which is a Stergushi-class corvette. Iran participated with destroyer-class vessels. South Africa dispatched a frigate to the drills. The United Arab Emirates sent corvette vessels. And then you had Brazil, Indonesia, and Ethiopia joining as observers, plus I'm sure many clandestine operatives that pretended to be Brazilian or Indonesian. The drills focus on maritime security, interoperability, safeguarding international trade routes and shipping lanes. The exercises take place amid heightened global tensions, drawing significant international and domestic scrutiny. The Trump administration has labeled the drills anti-American. Relations are further strained following a U.S. executive order in February that cut funding to South Africa due to its ties with bag actors. Specifically, Iran, it says. The drills began just days after the U.S. seized a Russian oil tanker linked to Venezuela. South Africa's Department of Defense maintains that the exercises are non-political. Bullshit! And essential for national security. Deputy Defense Minister Bantu Holomisa stated the drills were planned long before current geopolitical spikes. Well, that might be true, but it's always political. The pro-Western Democratic Alliance, the second largest party in South Africa's coalition, criticized the drills, arguing they compromise the country's neutral stance. You don't say. How about this? China applies to put 200,000 satellites in space after calling Starlink a crash risk. But the 200,000 satellites that they launch into space, that's just fine. U.S. Federal Communications Commission says it approved SpaceX to launch 7,500 second-generation Starlink satellites. I'll tell you a little bit more about this. What do we know about this? China filed plans to deploy up to 200,000 satellites, potentially the largest constellation ever proposed. Officials cited concerns over collision risks posed by existing constellations like Starlink. So, hey, we're going to put 200,000 more up there. Experts told CSCMP, South China Morning Press. I think that's what that stands for. The plan would massively expand China's communications, surveillance, navigation, and military dual-use capabilities. Critics warn it could worsen orbital congestion, increase debris risk, accelerate space militarization, and the move does highlight space as a new strategic domain, comparable to sea lanes or airspace. And who controls low Earth orbit controls communications, intelligence, and future warfare infrastructure. It reminds me of the test that they just did where they were able to take a few watts and completely obliterate the speeds of Starlink. What was that? China satellite test obliterates Starlink. Here it is. Yep. China satellite obliterates Starlink using a dim 2-watt laser fired from 36,000 kilometers in space. Wow. So that's about 22,300 miles in space. So you take 22,300 and times it by 5,680. Let's see how far that is. 36,000 km to miles. Yeah, 22,369. Let's see how many feet that is. Oh, yeah, 3,280. So we just take 3,280 times 36,000. And you get 118,080,000 feet in space. They were able to take 2 watts. And this 2-watt laser from 36,000 kilometers in space was able to obliterate the Starlink speeds. That's pretty impressive. So what are we talking here? Not only intact, but also carrying a high-speed data stream. The most surprising part, the entire system ran on just 2 watts. Wow. Yeah, but how fast was it? Here we go. The system's most striking feature is its efficiency. The laser downlink operated using only 2 watts, which is comparable to a small nightlight. It's in geostationary orbit with a downlink speed of 1 gigabyte per second, which is a performance level that for now places it far ahead of most commercial satellite internet services. Wow, that is incredible. I'm telling you, China, they're smart. Like their technology and their cities. I'm not a fan of smart cities, and I'm not a fan of social credit scores and having everything tracked 24/7 by artificial intelligence. Like, I'm not a fan of that, but they are so advanced, and their technologies right now and what they're doing and the way that they're incorporating everything into their society and their civilization. I mean, we better be prepared, not scared, but we got to give them credit where credit is due because they are extremely bright. And one other thing that they're working on right now that is absolutely incredible that I cannot believe we haven't followed suit is a quantum electrical grid for protection. Greg would be a big fan of this. Yeah, so this just came out. It is a quantum technology, including satellite-based quantum key distribution via its Messias satellite ground-based quantum sensors to secure its massive electrical grid against cyber attacks. And 4 days ago, this just came out. China sends 0.1 second blackout recovery technology to protect power grids in 12 nations. Wow. That's incredible. China's developed smart power grid technology that cuts blackout recovery time to 1/10 of a second, according to state media, which said the innovation was expected to play a bigger role in ensuring the safe and stable distribution of electricity worldwide. Yeah, like a solar flare, a Carrington event, an EMP, something that a terrorist attack on an electrical grid that could take years to recover from. And now China's working on technology that cuts blackouts to 1/10 of a second. That's pretty freaking impressive, man. We need to follow suit on that. In other news, so this hasn't been verified yet, but according to Right Angle News Network, they're alleging activists are using GPS to track ICE vehicles in southern Minnesota. And then afterwards, supposedly, these ICE agents smashed the car windows and forcibly removed the occupants from their car. We have no confirmation from Reuters or AP or state authorities yet, or ICE, but we will keep you posted on that as more information becomes available. According to Fox News, left-wing group backs tens of thousands of anti-ICE agitators nationwide. Fox News reports tens of thousands participated in anti-ICE demonstrations nationwide. Protests intensified after a fatal ICE-related shooting in Minnesota. DHS responded by increasing federal law enforcement presence. Political leaders are sharply divided over enforcement tactics and protest legitimacy. And immigration enforcement is becoming a mass mobilization flashpoint, raising the risk of clashes and political fallout. And it's interesting to see the responses in social media, what people have to say about this lady that died, that was shot. Like, it's some of the inhumane comments that I'm reading. I'm just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, she was a human being. I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know the circumstances. And I've watched multiple videos and multiple angles, and I still don't have enough information to be absolute on my opinion or on what I have to say. But I will say that the guy that did it, there were reports of him being dragged by a protester just several months ago. So you don't think that's going to have some PTSD, some stress and some trauma? And I'm not sticking up for him either. It was a bad situation all the way around. And you know what's even worse about it? Psychopaths on both sides are using it for their own agendas. They're not looking at it like, oh, the person that shot that lady, his life is going to be destroyed now because he's probably going to be, like he's going to go out in public and there's going to be people. The whole situation sucks. And then obviously the lady that lost her life and her family and the gal that she was married to. I mean, the whole thing sucks. But the way people are the way people are like, just the inhumanity with people, it's crazy how divided and how nasty people are on the internet sometimes. Like, what is wrong with you people? Get a freaking grip. That was a human being. Yeah, so what if she didn't have the same beliefs as you? Yeah, so what if she was crazy? Like, she was a human being. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, take a step back and read your comment before you post it and think to yourself, would I really, do you have kids? Do you want your kids to read those kind of posts? Probably not. So, I mean, have some compassion, but at the same time, that doesn't mean go completely crazy on the other spectrum. Like, people do stupid stuff all the time. Mistakes happen all the time. So are you going to take that event and use that to completely dictate your personality now and control your life? Because there's plenty of other things out there that are just as bad and just as horrific that you could be mad about, that you choose not to. So be careful how much you let the media control you is all that I'm saying. But now I'm sure there's going to be people like, Rex, how could you say that? How could you? Can I have an opinion? That is one thing that I think we still have here is the right to our opinion. And my opinion is it was a bad situation for everybody, and it's going to be used on both sides as a division, as more of a flashpoint to divide the people, not bring people together. So anyway, did you hear about this? This was wild. So the U.S. allegedly used powerful mystery weapons that brought Venezuelan soldiers to their knees during the Maduro raid. Witness account. Now, this hasn't been verified. This specific post that I'm about to read to you has not been verified by official sources either. But let's look into this because this is interesting. This is very, very interesting. This account from a Venezuelan security, and this is from Mike Netter on X. This account from a Venezuelan security guard loyal to Nicolas Maduro is absolutely chilling. And it explains a lot about why the tone across Latin America suddenly changed. Security guard. On the day of the operation, we didn't hear anything coming. We were on guard, but suddenly all our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones flying over our positions. We didn't know how to react. Interviewer. So what happened next? How was the main attack? Security guard. After those drones appeared, some helicopters arrived, but they were very few. I think barely 8 helicopters. From those helicopters, soldiers came down, but a very small number, maybe 20 men. But those men were technologically very advanced. They didn't look anything like we fought against before. Interviewer. And then the battle began? Security guard. Yes, but it was a massacre. We were hundreds, but we had no chance. They were shooting with such precision and speed. It seemed like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute. We couldn't do anything. Interviewer. And your own weapons, didn't they help? Security guard. No help at all, because it wasn't just the weapons. At one point, they launched something. I didn't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. Interviewer. And your comrades? Did they manage to resist? Security guard. No, not at all. Those 20 men without a single casualty killed hundreds of us. We had no way to compete with their technology, with their weapons. I swear, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after that sonic weapon or whatever it was. Interviewer. So do you think the rest of the region should think twice before confronting the Americans? Security guard. Without a doubt, I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight the United States. They have no idea what they're capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with, interviewer. And now that Trump has said Mexico is on the list, do you think the situation will change in Latin America? Security guard. Definitely. Everyone is already talking about this. No one wants to go through what we went through. Now everyone thinks twice. What happened here is going to change a lot of things, not just in Venezuela, but throughout the region. Okay. First of all, do you guys believe that? Doesn't that sound like the perfect neuro-linguistic programming piece to put fear in the masses? The way that it's worded? Is that how a security guard from Venezuela would speak? Like with that precise English? Or did they have a translator there? I mean, that to me seems super fishy, especially at the end. Like, oh, they were perfect. Everything was perfect. I would tell everybody not to do it. I would not do it again. America is not to be messed with. Like, there's the boogeyman story right there. Now, first of all, that all could be true. Like all of that stuff that happened could be true. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't doubt it for a minute. But what I do doubt is the official account, the way that the story is presented. To me, it sounds like a Chat GPT story almost. Chat GPT, write up a story for me about something that would scare a lot of people that think that they could take on the American military. Let's write up a scary story about this real quick and say that it was a Maduro security guard. How would you present it? Click. I would write it out like this, sir. I mean, I don't know. Once again, I could be way off on that. This could be an absolute legit interview, and the person that was describing what took place did it with such fluent English. Like maybe the security guard that they interviewed in Venezuela, maybe he was, from America, and he decided he was going to go work as a security guard in Venezuela. I mean, they don't really give you any details. It's very vague. I need more input. Need more input than a security guard that was interviewed by somebody. Like, that is very suspect to me, but, I don't know. I want to read the comments. What do people say? Could be true, but the account sounds fake AF. Dustin says he was Cuban. Nova says Saddam was thinking the same thing in Iraq. Thingamajig says, for sure, CIA made up the story to put fear into the enemy. I mean, we don't know that for sure. We don't know that at all. It's pure speculation, but it does just, And anyway, very, very interesting. Very interesting. And I'll tell you what. I told you what. I know people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I've heard stories of stuff that took place in Iraq and Afghanistan that sound very similar to this. Let's just put it that way. As far as like sound weapons and directed energy weapon type technologies, stuff that is just beyond, because it's one thing, you can block a bullet if you're behind, like if you obviously in a building that's heavily fortified, you got bulletproof vests on and all the gear, in a fortified tank or whatever. But can you block directed energy weapons that can actually can these directed energy weapons send signals through brick and through concrete and through steel that can penetrate these structures and cause your brain to feel like it's going to explode? Like Havana syndrome on steroids kind of stuff? I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised one bit. And in other news, did you hear about the Justice Department opening up an investigation into Jerome Powell as Trump ramps up campaign against the Federal Reserve? Let's read about this real quick. Actually, let's go back to the sonic weapon. I want to go back to the sonic weapon, the alleged sonic weapon. Venezuelan soldier claimed U.S. forces used a sonic or directed energy weapon during a Maduro raid. The alleged effects included nosebleeds, vomiting, sudden incapacitation. No confirmation from the Pentagon, no corroboration from Reuters or AP. So who knows? But probably, right? Maybe. And then Politico, this article right here, Politico was basically examining whether the U.S. actions amount to a de facto coup, describing a power vacuum, emergency rule, militia activity, and international. There's a lot of international concern about the power and positioning of U.S. technologies. But in other news, let's get to this one right now, shall we? The DOJ opened a criminal investigation involving Federal Reserve leadership, focusing on testimony about building renovations and oversight. Critics warn of political pressure undermining central bank independence. I mean, the fact that President Trump is going after Jerome Powell, that's unprecedented. Have we ever seen anything like this before? This is just wild. Welcome to the Twilight Zone. In other news, U-Haul drives into crowd during anti-Iranian regime rally in Westwood. Los Angeles Police Department says chaos erupted after a U-Haul drove into a crowd during an anti-Iranian regime rally near the federal building in Westwood Sunday afternoon. So we'll keep you posted on that. I don't know how bad the injuries were, but they did pull the guy out and I saw him pull the guy out and punch him in the face, the driver of that U-Haul. Be interesting to see who that driver was. I wonder if they could get information on that sooner than later. I'd really like to know that. And this is from The Guardian. China. Underground church says leaders detained as China steps up crackdown. Early rain pastors said to be among those held in sweep that followed arrests of members of other unregistered churches. Leaders of a prominent underground church have been detained in Southwest China, according to a church statement, the latest blow in what appears to be a sweeping crackdown on unregistered Christian groups in the country. So, what's the difference between being a registered pastor or a registered church in China and not? I want to look at that. I'm going to look that up in a minute. And this was the Waymo rider that had to jump out of the automated car when it drove onto train tracks with an oncoming train heading towards the Waymo. Are you serious? Well, we thought it was a smart car, but the smart car wanted to commit. The smart guard wanted to take you out. Maybe he, to think about this is where it gets spooky. If everything's autonomous, like getting a ride to work, you take an autonomous taxi or a Waymo or whatever, everything's ran by AI. What if AI glitches? Or what if somebody hacks the AI that doesn't like you? Well, it was just the glitch, sir. It was just the Waymo driving onto the train tracks of an incoming train. I totally thought it was going to get out of the way before the train smashed into the car. This guy's happy, though. Adam Johnson. He's carrying the lectern of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi through the U.S. Capitol January 6th. I mean, look, that whole thing was the ultimate divider, because some people look at this as just a catastrophe and a horrific event. They can't believe it. The Capitol building was raided and people just demanded that you let them in. And then we see video footage that, did you see the video footage where the security guards were letting people in and they're like, hey, come on in. And everybody's like, yeah, this looks fun. But we're getting a different perspective because it was chaos outside of the Capitol. It was crazy outside of the Capitol. So we get little bits and pieces, which creates division. That whole thing should not have happened. And then there's a lot of theories about why it did. And if there was certain ingredients in that goulash, that helped create the the conflict. And then the media takes that, and then the media is like, well, we have something more that we can use against the administration, or we have something more that we can use against those protesters, or, you know, we're going to make everybody think that they were all violent or they were all nonviolent. I mean, it's like there was a lot of violence and there were people that were nonviolent. There was a lot of idiots. And then there were people that were there that were just like, oh man, this is pretty freaking cool. Look at this. And there were people out there intentionally stirring the pot. So, like usual, the media has to tailor to their audience. And they're like, well, you know, 90% of our audience is right wing. So we're going to attack the left and promote the right, or vice versa. 90% of our audience is left wing. So we have to promote the left side of things. Like, that's one thing I really hope that you appreciate about Leak Project is we're looking for the truth and we're going to follow the data, and we might get things wrong. We get things wrong all the time. But we're not claiming absolutes here. We're looking for all the information. And to follow the left or the right paradigm, in my opinion, you're missing a huge part of the situation, which could be far more valuable if you understand both sides. Because as long as there's somebody out there that can create this division and split us as a society, they're going to be able to continue to profit off of that. Now, before the current administration, before the most recent elections, go back and listen to an interview that I did with Kevin Hogan. And he explains exactly what is going on right now in many levels and how things work at a political scale to create this division and confusion. Because if we're in like this fight or flight mode, it's a lot easier to control people when they're in a fight or flight mode. You have a lot less variables. When I say fight or flight, I'm using that as a metaphor. Like, people are concerned about what's going to happen. Well, I know people that are concerned that the market's going to collapse and that their retirement's going to disappear and they're not going to get access to Social Security that they put money into they're for the past 40, 50 years. They're genuinely concerned about that. And I can see why. And the news does a really good job of making people even more concerned about it, because it's just like politics. You've got the left and the right. Well, today we're going to pick the left side, and then tomorrow we're going to pick the right, and we're going to swing the pendulum back and forth on a regular basis. But this dude's happy, and he went to jail for 75 days. He went to jail for 75 days, and now he's running. Now he's running for office. Check this out. Adam Johnson filed to run as a Republican for an at-large seat on the Manatee County Commission on Tuesday. That was the 5th anniversary of the January 6th riot, where he was photographed smiling and waving as he carried Pelosi's podium after the pro-Trump mob attack January 6, 2021. I mean, look at this guy. Does he look violent to you? I mean, he looks like he got done going to the freaking dispensary, and now he's like, hey, man, what? Can I get one of those? This is awesome. So anyway, whatever. It was a riot, man. It was outside. It was bad outside. So, beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Be prepared, not scared. Be excellent to each other. Be the change you want to see. And things might work out. Things might work out. Visual disturbance. I love you, man. You want to hear something weird? I was literally thinking about you today. It's like, I wonder how he's doing. Yeah, because I know you, much love to you, brother. And I was like, I wonder when he's going to be back on YouTube. And bang, sure enough, a few hours later, I see that you were posting some podcasts. So good to see you, man. And now I see you in the chat. So good to see you in the chat. And good to see you, Shondell. How you doing, brother? Lavera, Mark, Dial, Razor. Who else we got on here? James. Corb. Corb likes to leave. negative comments in the comment section sometimes. Corb's like, I thought it was illegal to trespass on private property. Well, it is illegal to trespass on private property, Corb, but there was no private property signs on my field trip yesterday, buddy. Just saying. Just a bunch of uranium tailings and EMF towers. Jet, Dark Truth, Suede. Good to see all of you. Johan, much love. Brandon, what's up? Beautiful day, man. Beautiful day in the neighborhood. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, when are we going to do another podcast? Let's do one soon. You like my hat? You'll become a premium member at leakproject.com. You will become a Patreon member at leakproject.com. Yeah, you too, brother. What else we got? Got any other awesome news for me, ladies and gentlemen? No, thank you. Thank you for watching and commenting and being excellent. And in finishing the podcast, hey, do me a favor, would you? It'll take you like 30 seconds, totally free. Hit the bell here on YouTube. Make sure you get access to all the notifications. Hopefully, they'll send you the notifications when you go live. And subscribe to our Rumble page. It's totally free. And they do a pretty good job sending out notifications after we've uploaded a live show on our Rumble page as well. So we're Leak Project on Rumble, Leak Project on Patreon, leakproject.com, and here on YouTube. Thank you. Have a beautiful day and be the change you want to see.